Hello, good morning. This is Jerry Lawrence from the Delaware County Board of Elections. Joining me this morning are my fellow members of the Board of Elections, Ashley Lunkheimer and James Byrne, and I will call to order the April 28th, 2021 meeting of the Board of Elections. First item on the agenda today is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll give everybody a moment to stand. And we will pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right. Are there any? Is there any discussion on the agenda, or are we set to proceed with the agenda that was circulated?
I believe we're good to go. We moved up the supervisor of voting machine warehouse because that's probably that is the main item today.
Okay, very good. And so we'll move on to approval of the minutes, which were circulated to the board. I think there was one minor change on the second paragraph of, I think, the third page. Comment relates to Miss Jackson, and as the minutes were originally drafted, it says Miss. It's obviously the word Jackson's missing, so I propose we amend it to place Miss Jackson's name there. And does anyone else have any comments on the minutes?
I think, Mr. Chairman, I do think there was a zero missing from the 150,000. I thought as well. That was the edit you just mentioned was one I had, but there's another one. I thought there was a typo.
Okay. And where was that? Hold on, I have the minutes here. Sorry, of course,
Yeah, no, and I didn't have it up. It's on page, I don't know what page it is, but it's the paragraph that's one line that says Mr. Allen then stated there is it's 150,00 left. So that's
all right. So, well, I see that now. Yeah, that is on towards the bottom of the second page. It's the next to last paragraph on the second page. That's also a typo. So, with those two amendments, are there any others? So, could we have a motion to approve the minutes with those two minor amendments?
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And the minutes are adopted with those amendments, and I would ask that those two amendments be made to the minutes and they be placed in the board's records. The next item is just that. Mr. Savage, are you ready, sir?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning.
You'll have to bear
I
with
hope
me.
you're feeling well this morning.
Yeah, I'm being assaulted by pollen, so you're gonna have to bear with me.
Okay. I have that same affliction, but I take this product called Zyrtec, which is very effective.
All right. So we have a couple changes. They're all bipartisan agreements. Fallcroft 1, the municipal leaders both reached out to me at the same time and want to move Fallcroft 1 from the Fallcroft Municipal Building on Elmwood Avenue to Fallcroft Union Church, which is the current voting location for Fallcroft 2. They voted, Fallcroft 1 and Fallcroft 2 both voted in Fallcroft Union Church the 2020 primary. Then we moved Fallcroft 1 for the general, and they felt like it worked better with both at Fallcroft Union Church. So bipartisan agreement, proposal is to move Fallcroft 1 from the municipal building to Fallcroft Union Church. Do you want me to just go through them all?
Yeah, I think the list you sent, they were all by agreement or non-controversial. So unless anybody objects, I think we could do them all together.
Okay. Upland 1 and Upland 2 both voted at Upland Borough Hall in the 2020 general election. They want to return. We have bipartisan agreement to return all Upland polling locations to their historical or pre-pandemic locations. So Upland 1 would return to Upland Fire Company at 1 Auburn Drive. Upland 2 would return to Upland Baptist Church, 325 Main Street. Upland 3, no action required. That would remain at Borough Hall. One other issue here, I don't know whether this needs approval. It's Springfield 4-1 goes to Springfield High School, which it's still Springfield High School, but not in the same location anymore. So the address has changed. So I don't know if we just need to, Crystal Winterbottom is aware of it, send out new voter registration cards, I guess, with the new address, but I don't know that it's necessarily a change of the polling location.
So Jim, just let me make sure I understand. It's, we had issue, things obviously have come up, like when it goes from classroom 1 to classroom 2, that kind of thing within the same building. I'm a little concerned about if it's a different address. Are people expected to go to a different physical location of the building? And I want to make sure they have notice and they can find where they're expected to go. That's really my concern on this one.
Yes, sir. That's exactly the point. And that's what I'm saying. I think that it's probably a good idea to send out new voter registration cards with the new address.
All right. So let's do it as a change, just so nobody can second guess. It may be belt and suspenders, but.
Is it the Springfield 4-1 would change from Springfield High School to Springfield High School, but the new address is 200 South Rolling Road in Springfield.
So I think this is Jim Burke. Can I jump in for a second, Jerry?
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I think that's the construction of the new school, right, Jim? I think they knocked the school down and they built a new school right in back of it. So they're pretty close to each other, but I agree we should give them notice. Yeah.
Me too, I agree with that.
Yeah, somebody sent me a picture of the demolished building. That's how I found out.
Yeah. They knocked the one down and they put the other. It's right on the same lot. It's just right in back of it.
Okay, I think the entrance now is on a different street, though.
That's right. You're right. You're good. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was over there a couple of times in the last month. It's intuitive, but I think the belt and suspenders approach is the best.
Right.
Especially since there's a new physical address.
So then we'd be requesting a total of 4 approvals here: Fallcroft 1, Upland 2, and this sort of administrative change on Springfield 4-1.
Okay. All right. Can we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Yeah.
Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So the motion carries, and we can move forward. And just one thing that occurred to me, actually, as we were voting, is just, Mr. Savage, we should make sure that this new location at the Springfield High School comports with the physical inspection requirements and the doorways are the right distance, et cetera, et cetera. I'm rather confident they would be. If it's a building being built today, it'll comply with ADA, but we should just make sure that we follow our procedures on that.
We'll run out and take a look at it. We'll have an inspection report. It just really sort of came to my attention yesterday. So
no worries, and I would think, generally speaking, modern buildings, the requirements of the code are less than the ADA, so we're generally safe with any recently built building, but we'll just be sure. Okay, very good. Anything else, Mr. Savage?
No, I think I'm on a little bit later.
All right. Okay. Mr. Allen.
Good morning, board members. Just for the sake of good order, I would like to note that with that change, that now closes the books, if you will, on any polling place changes by statute And from here on out, hopefully this won't be the case, but only in an emergency situation would we make any additional changes between now and Election Day on May 18th. First off, I'd like to thank the team here. Everybody's rising up to crunch time as we prepare for processing the outbound vote by mail ballots that are going to be going out. We did our first ever mailing of the election guide. It was our most comprehensive election worker guide, which is the poll worker handbook. And we're very pleased that it provides much more information than we've ever had before. It has had the desired effect. The mailing reached people, and then they in turn began signing up in very large numbers for our in-person training sessions at the Media Community Center. They've been very well attended. We'll get to more details on that in a few minutes. Also, the mailing has had another desired and planned effect, and that is it's reminded people that May 18 is the primary. Here in election land, we all have accepted in our minds that, May 18, we've already got that in our calendar in our brains, but it's important for for us to communicate that with all of our poll workers and then in turn, all of our voters. And so a few of the poll workers have notified us that they are not going to be able to serve. And that was part of the plan of getting that out there with the envelope clearly marked, these are materials for the May 18 primary. So in the meantime, we've got the vote by mail ballots are going out and we'll begin reaching voters. We've coordinated, started the pre-election logic and accuracy testing. We're going through the supply preparations, and with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Savage to talk about the work out at the warehouse right now.
Good morning again. If we had this meeting later this afternoon, I'd be able to report to you that all of our precinct level equipment has finished logic and accuracy testing, but we're having it at 11 a.m. So I can report to you that we have about 15 or 18 precincts left to finish. Then we'll have the election day rover equipment. We need to get through testing. That's about 65 pieces of equipment, scanners and touch writers, but everything, it's a complicated ballot. We kind of got a late start. The staff here has just absolutely crushed it, getting through it. And we haven't had any problems, and barring any catastrophic issues in the next few days, we should be well ahead of the Monday deadline. The rest of the PPE kits are all together, ready to go. We're getting ready to reach out and let all polling locations know their delivery dates. So everything's on track here.
So next up,
Thank you.
I'd like to hear from Patty Carfagna and Christina Iacono about the status of the poll worker training. They have some really excellent news to report. So I don't know if you want to start with Patty.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, board. We do have some excellent news to report. The mailing was very well received. We've gotten terrific comments during the in-person training over the last 4 sessions. This morning, we did receive a phone call from a poll worker who mentioned that it was the most impressive package she has ever received. So we're off to a good start. We are getting a lot of the poll worker contact forms that were in that mailing either mailed back to us, or some are handing them in at the in-person training sessions. The training sessions are almost to capacity at 15 sessions. We have a capacity of 40 per each session, and in most cases, we are up to either 40 or very close to it for those sessions. The comments have been very, very good during the training. They ask a lot of questions, some pertaining to their personal polling locations, and I think we've helped out a lot with looking at our new information and the new procedures that we have, and it's all been well received. And I do want to mention that after Saturday's session, we received a round of applause, so we're very excited to report that. And I think that's all I have. Christina?
Oh, that's great, Patty. Thank you. I wanted to reiterate that I have a lot of the same info but I can give you an update. In the past 2 minutes, we had some more number changes. So we've got a lot of turnout. The in-person training classes are underway at Media Community Center. As Patty said, they are capped at 40 students per session. Online registration is required in advance to secure that spot. We have 600 worker spots. We have 390 that have already registered for training. In the past 5 minutes, we've had another 3. And then we have 210 remaining vacant positions for training available. We have, to date, we've had all classes that have had about a 98% attendance. So there's a little bit of room, but we're really hitting that mark that we need to hit. So the classes are filled and we're doing great with that. Online training is also available online. That will consist of reading the comprehensive new Election Day guide and watching the equipment videos online. Regardless of the training taken, poll workers must pass the training test. The test will be posted online 10 days in advance of the election. Poll workers will not be paid for training if they do not pass the test, but the test can be taken as many times as needed to score a passing grade. And that's all I've got for today. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next, Ms. Winterbottom is going to be reporting on the status of our drop boxes.
Good morning, all. So for the drop boxes, not including the one here in media, which is open, but all 40 throughout the county have been opened on schedule and they are all ready to use. We completed that and we're good to go with the drop boxes.
You're also up next, Crystal, as far as voter registration, how we are in terms of keeping up to date, or what kind of backlogs we may have. And I was hoping you could also discuss the upcoming May 3rd deadline for the public.
Yeah, so as to date, we have processed just about 42,000 applications from after the last day, last election. May 3rd is the last day to register or make any changes or update any registration information. Those applications have to be received in our office on May 3rd. We don't do the postmarks anymore after 2020 Act 77. So May 3rd is the last day. We are all caught up on all our work, and we will make sure we get all the approved polling place change cards that we talked about earlier with Mr. Savage, printed, sealed, and mailed out as soon as possible.
I'd like to piggyback on Crystal's report and point out to the public that even though this is a municipal primary, it is open to all voters. So if you're a registered Republican, you will get a Republican ballot. If you're a registered Democrat, Democratic Party registration, you'll get a Democratic ballot. And if you're a nonpartisan or independent voter who's not aligned with either party, you still participate in this election. You will only be voting on the statewide referendum questions that Pennsylvania has put out for the constitutional amendments. But this is, even though it's a primary election, it's open to all voters. And we encourage anyone who needs to update their registration or register for the first time to do so either online or at our offices in media on or before close of business on May the 3rd. Next, Lorene, I was hoping you'd give us two reports on the vote by mail, the quantity that we have out there, and then how soon they'll be reaching voters, and then the status of the printing of the ballots for Election Day.
Yes, thank you. As of right before this meeting, the Bureau of Elections at the Wharf has processed just over 32,000 applications for this election. As you said, it comprises of both Democratic, Republican, and the third party voters who are applying. Of those 32,000, just under 29,000 have been placed in the mail, and voters should be receiving those within the next 2 days. They're being dropped in the Philadelphia Postal Service and the large distribution center, so that will be immediately then forwarded to the local post offices. So that leaves us a difference of just over 3,000 ballots. The files will be made for those ballots and labels tonight, and will begin being processed and hopefully out by this weekend as well. The Bureau of Election staff here has been maintaining entering each day. The on-lines are constant 24 hours. So in the morning, they knock out what is there from the night before, but it's been a very good workflow, and it's very nice rhythm that we have going. So very, very happy to report that.
And on the ballot printing?
Yes, for the Election Day ballot printing, those files have been sent to our printer, MER, and they are producing those. And I will have a delivery date for Mr. Savage so that they can go into the supply or the caddies for him to send to the precincts. But all those files are made and were to MER last night.
And I'd like to point out to the board members that Mr. Savage, in one of our first discussions, described a situation that occurred. It was not a monumental crisis, but nonetheless, it was a disruption that occurred on November the 3rd with some of the ballots. And so we worked on a preventative solution to that. We do have out at Michigan Election Resources, or MER, the ballot printer, a worker who is testing each one of the ballot styles. We have a universally programmed scanner. We have a protocol where he marks all of the test ballots and clearly marks them as tests, signs each one of the test ballots, make sure that they are accepted by the scanner, and that they do other things like detect overvotes and fully undervoted both sides of the either side of the ballot. So we're putting putting a second belt on along with that belt and suspenders, so that we're going to do a very, very thorough testing of the precinct ballots before they arrive at our voting machine warehouse, so that we can avoid any kind of possibility with a primary, municipal primary. We have the very strong likelihood that there could be one or more contests decided by only a handful of votes. So we think that's very critical, and we're going to continue to do that moving forward on all ballot printing operations. Secondly, I'd like to point out that right outside here at the Bureau of Elections and Media, our voter service center is open. So if there are voters, and we've had several voters come through since Monday, and either apply for replacement if they were heading out of town, vote by mail ballots, and they're able to either take them home and return them either by mail or at one of our drop boxes, or they can have the option of completing it and placing it in the secrecy envelope, and then placing the secrecy envelope in the exterior envelope so that they can deposit it. And we've got security measures here for securing those ballot deposits that we take here at Media each and every night. And with that, we'll conclude the report unless there are any questions.
I'm sorry, Jerry, you want to go first? I'm sorry.
No, Jim, go ahead.
Okay. I just I just got a couple calls about ballots, and I think that the answers were in what your folks were saying, but some people called me about having sent in to get mail-in ballots early and having not received ballots yet. And I also saw in our public comment there was a person that had raised the same issue today. So could you just go back over that slowly as to what the answer to that is, when they should be receiving them?
Yes, the development of the files was there were some issues with the database and the development of the database that set back the development of the files to the printer. Once we got them to the printer last week, they acted on that immediately. We regret the inconvenience that it caused any voters. However, we are on top of it, and we will be back to caught up today. The MER was able to assure us that they would have the outbound ballot envelopes with all the inserts and completely sealed and everything at the Philadelphia U.S. Postal Service today, Wednesday. And so we will be caught up on the original approximately 29,000. And then, as Ms. Hagan said, she's preparing files for the next batches of 1,500 and up to 3,000 more.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Allen?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to, I appreciate the quality assurance program that you've described with the printer. I think that will be critical to not running into any of the issues that we had in the last election. I'm glad to see that we're process improving and lessons learned. So thank you for that information.
Thank you.
It's reassuring.
And I want to point out that MER was extremely receptive and accommodating because this was not part of the original specifications, but they totally understood why we wanted to do this and how we were going to do it. And they've made sure that the person that we assigned to this, James Warner, has had a good workspace to work with, and they've been very helpful with him throughout this. So I'm very pleased with the performance of Mr. Warner as well as MER on this front.
And just to clarify for the public who may not have been paying as close attention in November, and we're saying the issues we had on November 3rd, what we had was several batches of ballots that did not work. In other words, the printing of the ballots did not enable them to properly scan, and we were able to work around it that day. We had other batches that, for those same precincts that were scannable, we were able to print temporary ballots. We, of course, being a paper ballot system, it's the paper ballots are all there. If they don't scan, and there's to be a problem. So we were able to overcome it, but this is a proactive way to quality control and test over and above what's provided for in the statute that is going to give us a greater assurance that everything is going to go more smoothly on election day. So again, thank you to everyone involved in this, and particularly Mr. Warner, who's been spending some time out in the Midwest instead of at home. But all right, the old business is next on our agenda. I know there was some discussion at the prior meeting about the budgeting process, and it's something the board traditionally had not been involved in. And Mr. Allen, I think we're going to look into that and perhaps can address it now.
Yes, since the last meeting, I did deliver, I believe it was a week and a half ago, or maybe it was last week, to Mr. Byrne, the reports I was able to obtain from the CFO's office for Delaware County, outlining the original budgets as well as all the expenditures. And beyond that, if there are any questions, I'll try to field them as best as possible, or if not, get back to you in writing and the next board meeting.
Okay.
No, it doesn't.
I have a couple questions. Is it okay to go, Jim?
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. So Mr. Allen, you did get me some stuff, and I do appreciate it. One question I guess I had originally was, you got me the budget and expenditures for 2019, 2020, and 2021, but then it was also a memo with a number of items that had cost on them. And I don't see a lot of those costs. They're not included in the budget and the expenditure sheets that you sent to me.
I'd have to go over that and get back to you on that. Again, the initial question was about getting you the 2019, 2020, and 2021 budgets and expenditures. I apologize for not having had time to go through those items, which, as we both know, predate, my arrival here.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. There's an April 12th, 2021 memo from Mr. Lazarus, and it seems to set out an awful lot of cost as well that don't seem to be included in those budget and expense. If we could find out that would be helpful to me. And I also noticed on the Bureau of Elections budget for 2021 this year, that it's gone up $3 million, up to $318,000 from $848 in 2019. And I'm just wondering what I can see some of the changes in the hourly full-time employees and non-full-time employees. And then the other question I have with respect to that, though, is the overtime proposed has gone up $228,000. In addition to all the other employees that we have. Is there a reason for that?
Well, I can't speak to the decisions that were made prior to my arrival, and I'll try to look into those, but I can provide some context just in terms of nationwide patterns, as well as what occurred here in Delaware County based on what I've been able to learn over the last 4.5 weeks. First off, 2019 obviously was a lot different year. I don't think I've heard anyone say, I really hate 2019. I have heard some people say some disparaging things about 2020. But it was different in a couple of ways. Operationally, we had a totally different voting equipment system in Delaware County that did not have the level of safeguards and did not have also the level of complexity. So there were programming changes, there were paper changes, there were everything else. Add to that Public Act 77, which was a bipartisan effort from what I understand, and the impact that it had on vote by mail and expanding that option. And then you throw onto that combination of new circumstances, the pandemic, and the requirement to acquire additional space so that people could conduct the various tasks, especially at the wharf, being able to expand operations out there and get new vote by mail processing equipment installed in rapid fashion. But those are all factors in a very well-attended election with nearly 80% turnout. And in spite of all the headwinds, Delaware County was able to pull off, in my estimation, and several other jurisdictions around the country were too, a rather amazing performance in being able to meet all those needs with our poll workers, with our voters, and with the new systems, and those all impacted our costs. So a combination of the equipment, and then you throw on the pandemic, and then you throw on Public Act 77. Those are all contributing factors to the costs that you've seen.
Yeah, but the cost from 2020, the budgeted amount and the amount spent for the Bureau of Elections, the budget was 993 and the expenditure was only 713 in 2020. and now the proposed budget is $3,813,000. That's a heck of a jump. You think you hated 2020? I'm going to hate 2021 worse if we're spending $4 million.
Well, I personally like 2021 pretty well. I enjoy this new setting, quite honestly. But I think that reflects the fact that the 2020 budget was drawn up well in advance of any knowledge of the pandemic or the issues that we were going to have, or the cost of operating of the new systems, specifically dealing with Public Act 77. So I'd have to look into that further. And
Okay.
I suspect that.
I'm not trying to cross-examine you, but
I don't feel that you are.
It doesn't make sense that I hear what you're saying, but the expenditures for 2020 for the election bureau were only 713,000. So what I'm thinking, and I'm probably right, is that a lot of expenditures are not shown because they're within that memo of April 21st. And that's what I'd really like to get at. How much money did we spend on the election? And like, where did the money come from? I've heard before that there's grants and COVID monies and all this. So a simple listing of where it came from, how much we spent altogether, because like I don't see rent on here, either for the wharf or the moving expenses or any of that. And that's all contained within that memo that you gave me. There's just no cost there for that. So if you could just continue on that, I would appreciate that. And in the meantime, Jerry and Ashley, I would ask that the expenditures and budgets be posted to our website along with this memo, so that we have a transparent picture for everybody to see how much money we're spending.
I asked the solicitor what the practice or procedure on that. I mean, I think the county budget is actually already posted, isn't it?
That may very well be. I assume it is. I would have to.
Yeah, I think this material is posted and
with
available.
the county solicitor.
Wouldn't it be easy to
it would seem to me, Jim, could you hold on 1 second?
Yeah.
It would seem to me if it's already done, we don't need to be duplicative. If it's not, then we should explore how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 10 pages. Could go on our website. It'd be a heck of a lot easier than making somebody search all through the county website to find it. If it's right on the election board website. And like I said, it's right now it's 10 pages. I'm sure it's going to grow once we find what the other costs are. But since we have it and it's done, I don't see what harm is in posting it. Let everybody see it.
Yeah, I don't see harm either. I just want to, I don't know what, it's something we never did for the last 80 years. And I want to make sure that we're permitted to do it under the rules of the law. It doesn't seem to me that there would be a restriction, but I just want to be sure before we run ahead and do something we can't do. So we'll have Manley check on that. And if we can, I don't see it being a problem. That's why I brought up the fact that it's published already. I think it is, but let's just not, changing a practice that existed of not disclosing it for years and years and years. I don't want to make a mistake and disclose something we're not supposed to. So let's just make sure we're okay to do it. And I'm all in favor of transparency.
Okay.
Me too. I agree with that process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else on this item of the budgets and the finances that was, I forget exactly what it was called in the new business. Let me put the agenda back up under the prior year's past budgets issue.
No, just Mr. Allen's going to keep trying to get it for me along with balancing his other jobs. I know that, but I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next, the status of in-person meetings. I think we talked about at the last meeting that seemed to be a consensus that the board members were hopeful to return to the in-person meetings as we traditionally had, and obviously we hadn't. So perhaps, Mr. Allen, you could give us an update of what you think may be going on with that.
Yes, we all look forward to having, maskless summer celebrations, festivals, and everything else, and we look forward to having open meetings again in person. However, at this time, I shared some of the most recent data with Mr. Byrne last week, where we were 2 weeks ago, we were paralleling very closely a rather significant rise. We were almost dead even. It's probably a bad choice of words. I apologize. We're almost exactly even with the rise that we saw and the pattern that we saw in early November as it was climbing up, and hopefully it won't continue that way. And then since I had that communication with Mr. Byrne, we had yet another increase. So it's continuing to go in the wrong direction, unfortunately. And those are Delaware County specific data that I'm referencing. It is not rising at quite the same pace, but it is still, this past week was still higher in the number of cases, again, than the week prior to that. I wish I had better news, but for the time being, the recommendation is that we avoid a public meeting in the traditional format, and that we're going to have to continue at least for now. As stated at the last meeting, it's our hope that either by the end of May or perhaps early June, hopefully, if cases start to flatten, we'll be able to revisit this and have in-person meetings, and I look forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I'd like to move back to in-person meetings. I know just reading the Daily Times today that Garnet Valley went back to virtual learning because they had a big outbreak and they had to close the schools. And I read something about Haverford Township. The staff of the township was quoted saying they're looking into canceling the Haverford Township Day. They haven't made a decision yet, but they don't know how they're going to be able to hold that, and that's in October. So hopefully, I think we are in better shape by October. But I think we just have to continue to follow the advice from the health officials, and continue to ask them and tell them we want to meet in person. But I'm certainly not going to be the one to disregard their directives and just to hold a meeting.
Okay. If there's nothing else, that's all I have on those two items, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Has there been any new public comment after what was circulated already?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there's three statements. I can read those if you'd like me to proceed. Okay, the first one is from Ed McBride. He states, "Dear Board of Election Board members, with this upcoming election upon us as a resident of the 3rd Ward, 1st Precinct of Darby Township, I would be more comfortable meeting at the Goodwill Fire Company than at the school. I was not comfortable with the amount of people that gathered at the school. Please move polling place back to the original location. Thank you." The next one is from Maggie D, and she says, "Are the poll worker handbooks available for the people who aren't poll workers?"
Yes, they are. We do offer those on our website, and we do have spare copies at our media offices if someone wants to pick up a hard copy and they cannot access the internet.
Thank you. And then the third question right now is from Carol Miller. How many provisional ballots will be provided to each precinct? In the previous election, there were many precincts that did not have enough provisionals. And Ms. Miller is from the Republican Party.
And Ms. Hagan, you and I have discussed this item and reviewed this, so if you want to go ahead and answer that, please feel free.
Yes, we have, as Mr. Allen stated, looked at usage over the last 2 elections, both November and also the primary of last year with the significant changes. We also have looked at, there is the volume for a municipal election, and have calculated the number of ballots that are going out both by mail, also at the precinct level, and determined that the count we have, and there will be counts for the Republican provisional, Democrat provisional, third party provisional, so that each category of ballots are spoken and represented there at the precinct for the voters, will exceed proportionately the number that is anticipated to be needed.
In short,
And,
in short, to answer the voter's question, we will have approximately 60 to 70 ballots pre-printed, split evenly between the two parties, fairly evenly, and then provisional ballots. And then we also have the belt and suspenders of being able to print up more if there is an anomaly precinct on election day. Right now, as we noted earlier, we're currently at a volume of about 32,000 vote by mail applications compared to November when we were looking at 200,000. So, you know, we've taken into consideration the impact of Public Act 77 on the likelihood of additional provisional ballots being cast. But we in recognition of Mr. Burns' comments, we don't want to, we don't want to kill trees just for the sake of killing trees and have a ridiculous number of provisional ballots out there.
On this subject, this is Manley. On this subject, I would just note that the code, by virtue of the Act 77 amendment, specifies the number or minimum number of provisional ballots that should be available. And I would simply note that for 2020, we doubled, and in some cases more than doubled, or exceeded it substantially more than doubled the numbers that were required by the statute. So we made provision to have a substantial oversupply of provisional ballots, and in some cases with no track record or history of what to expect in that type of an election with this new equipment and mail-in voting and a pandemic. We simply didn't have any data to go on beyond our best approximations, which is what we used. But we did substantially exceed the statutory requirements in 2020 in terms of having provisional ballots.
Yeah, Mr. Parks made a lot of the points I wanted to make, and Ms. Miller does raise something significant. But I know that Ms. Hagan and Ms. Jackson, we were working with her last fall, really ordered and printed substantially more than was required, substantially more than we ever had in the past. We thought we had learned from our experience in June, and there still were a couple of precincts, not many, where we were caught short, and we have procedures in place to bring them out. But I think Mr. Parks makes the valid point that as we gain a little more experience with the new procedures, we can be better able to dial in those numbers. And we had a lot of provisional voting in November that ultimately were ballots that were received and that came in, and there was people who were concerned that they didn't see that their ballot had been returned. And I think perhaps as the state system updates and is able to better reflect what's been returned and so forth, that those concerns will probably also be assuaged to some degree. But I'm glad that Mr. Allen and Ms. Hagan are continuing to look at this and study this and try to get it, because we don't like having that fire drill on election day where the ballot printers in the precincts are pressed into service, or that we have to use regular ballots, or that we have to print additional ballots at the Board of Elections and have them brought out to the polling places. To the extent we can have plenty in place and make sure of that, then that would be better. And I think also, a lot of this too is communications with the judges of elections, and I know that that's something that's being talked about more at the training, that making sure you locate all your supplies when you get there in the morning. We had a couple instances where people didn't recognize they had a number of provisional ballots that they did, and they ordered more, and we still got the original ones returned to us because they never found them in their supplies, or if you wait too long to order them. So I think, we've looked at a lot of these issues, Ms. Miller, and we're trying to make this as smooth as possible, and hopefully the experience of another election under our belts with the system will make it even better this time. Probably not perfect, but we're striving to be that. So, all right. The one other issue in public comment, and it was in a lot of the other public comments that we reviewed before the meeting, there was just reference to it here again, the Darby Township. We considered that at the last meeting, and there were people in favor of one location for the polls. There was people in favor of the traditional location for the polls in the public comment and on both sides of the issue. And there was people on the board that had differences of opinions, and the issue was addressed and solved, and it's done for this election. And if somebody wants to file a petition and have it brought up before the next election, the board will consider it and evaluate it. But I understand that there's differences of opinions within the community, and a decision has been made, and we'll move forward for this election. And if people want to file a petition, have us consider it again, we'll do that. So, anybody want to address anything else in the public comment?
I believe there was one other public comment. It's a very thoughtful question. You have that, Lorene?
Go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead.
There was the three that I had read. There was Ms. Dees, who was asking about the materials and whether that would be available to someone who's not a poll worker. And that was answered that yes, they could. And then as Mr. Lawrence just addressed, there's Mr. McBride's question or comments about Darby Township, and then Ms. Miller's.
Okay, I thought there was also a question submitted last night or last evening regarding the security surrounding the V drive return on election night. Is there any chance you still have that available?
Yes, there were several people who wrote in about that, and I believe it was also addressed at some of the training classes. People were concerned about the V drives. I'm trying to find several of them. This is from Eileen Fabry. Dear Delaware County Board of Elections, I've been informed of the election day procedures that were taught at the county election poll workers at recent poll worker training sessions. At the end of the night after the election, a judge of elections or poll worker has been instructed to return the election V drives, which is short for the Verity, which is our voting system's name, Verity drives, and the election return sheet in an unsealed bag with no chain of custody precautions. This lack of security and failure to provide chain of custody procedures is unacceptable. It concerns me that there are no precautions to prevent fraud. The V drives and return sheets must have a chain of custody and be delivered in a bag or box secured with a numbered seal. Chester County has the drives returned in a sealed bag. Why doesn't Delaware County? And that is Eileen Fabry from Haverford Township. Would you like me to read all the comments regarding that, or is that a summary?
Yes. And the reason I would like you to is that I think these are excellent questions, and I want to acknowledge the voters who raised these, and I want to address their questions. And these are very valid concerns, and I want to address these in the board meeting in addition to sending them in feedback emails.
Okay. Just going through all the comments to find those. Okay, this is from Cynthia Long.
Wait, Lorene, hold on just 1 minute. Maybe I didn't.
They repeat.
We had a number of the comments that were similar. It was almost a form, frankly. A lot of them were almost word for word the same. Okay. On this point, Jim, are you asking Lorene to read them all? But I mean,
if she has the names,
the team is the same. And
okay,
maybe you could just read the names, because I think what Jim is saying is he just wants to acknowledge the people that wrote in, and maybe you don't have to read the whole text, Lorene. Just acknowledge that these we have a lot of terrific poll workers, and that some of them who paid close attention and raised these concerns at the training. I think Jim just wants to acknowledge them rather than, I don't know, the public wants to sit through the reading of the same thing 4, 5, 6 times, whatever it is.
Okay, so we have a similar comment from Peter Kane from Upper Darby Township regarding the V drives and a chain of custody. We have Mary McDonald from Drexel Hill area of Delaware County. making similar comments. I read Ms. Fabry's. Cynthia Long from Upper Darby Township, 410, regarding the same questions and expressing concern. Janine Halligan from Upper Darby Township. Okay, Nancy Caramanico of Glen Mills area of Delaware County. Christina Atmahara from from Leicester, Delaware County. And that is all the ones that reference the return of the V drives.
Okay. Well, I want to thank these voters for being very wise and thoughtful and submitting these questions. The first thing I want to assure them is that the paper ballots and not the V drives are the official records of the voters' selections, and the paper ballots are what are counted initially in the scanner and then subject to post-election canvassing, audits, and if needed, a recount or what's called an election contest. Security seals are very definitely used for the return of those paper ballots. Next, all the election data that is stored on the V drive, which is similar to USB chip that goes into each scanner as well as the touch writer, is protected with NIST, or National Institute of Standards and Technology approved systems and federally and state approved systems for a digital signature on each transaction. So any time the polls are closed, even if someone had the digital signature, it would add on an event, and the tampering would be evident, and that V drive would not be read. That being said, we will be using tear-resistant and tamper-evident Tyvek envelopes. These are the very durable envelopes, and these will be in the pouches for both the return sheets and the V drives. We're in the process of making sure that the trainers explain this, and we're also going to make sure that in the precinct binder, where where our poll workers were going to return the return sheets, we will redirect the voters to be, or the poll workers rather, to be using the Tyvek envelope, which they will be sealed, and there will be instructions on that envelope that require the poll workers, after they seal it, to sign their names across that seal. So then when they get to the receiving station, we'll have 3 receiving stations or drop-off sites on election night. They will check those, and then they will put those in tamper-evident boxes, again, to preserve the chain of custody for the seals and accounting for those. So again, I want to thank the voters for raising these questions. We take seriously the issue of balloting system integrity and security, but I want to assure them that we are going to place a procedure in the hands of the poll workers to make sure that these are safe and sound, going from the polling place to the receiving station and then to Chester, where they will be processed ultimately. And that's all, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman?
You know what, Jim? I'm sorry I was inadvertently on mute. I had started to talk, but I was on mute. Thank you for reminding me. So thank you. And I wanted to add two things, that in addition to the physical security of these tamper-resistant pouches, envelopes that they'll be sealed in, secondly, the electronic complications of dealing with how these drives are encoded. Remember that these are being transported by the judges of elections, who are sworn election officials, who do conduct the election pursuant to the rules. But even if you got past all those security checks, the results, after they go through the scanner and before that V drive is removed, are printed out. And there's multiple copies provided under the statute to the various election workers representing different parties that are there on election night. So you know the number that was recorded on that V drive before it ever leaves the precinct. And even if someone nefarious was able to defeat all these other checks that are taking place between the time the V drive leaves and the V drive gets to the Board of Elections in Chester, the poll workers and the watchers, they have the numbers that are recorded in the precinct at 8 o'clock or 8:30, right after the polls close, and they're able to double check that. So the election code provides a number of checks and balances, and we do have the physical security of these drives, and we do take these steps that Mr. Allen described to protect that. But as to election integrity, that's why those numbers are read in the precinct shortly after the precinct closes, so that everyone knows. And it's all out in the open, it's all out and transparent, and that even if all these procedures that Mr. Allen described are somehow defeated, people would know. The watchers would know, the local election officials would know that the numbers that are somehow manipulated before they get to the Board of Elections headquarters, they're able to easily check that. And that's why the code has those additional checks and balances in it. So it's a very good question, and we do certainly appreciate everyone, especially the poll workers, who are paying attention and thinking through the system and making sure that the election is conducted in a fair and transparent manner. And that's ultimately our goal to ensure that. So unless anybody has anything else to say, I see we have next meeting date listed on our agenda. I don't know if we're going to set that now or what the plan is with that.
I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we consider having a meeting in 2 weeks, if that's acceptable to the board members. And then after the election, and then for the summer months, we can scale it back to something like 1 per month if needed or as needed. And then we can ramp it up again in the fall if that's acceptable with you.
That seems reasonable to me. Jim, Ashley, what do you think?
Yeah, what you said, 1 in 2 weeks and then 1 after the election. So 2 more is that what we're talking about?
Right. And then, of course, we'd need a certification.
I was going to say, that is the certification meeting separate from that other meeting?
Well, the other meeting would be if needed, if we had to address some kind of issue.
Okay. So let's reserve the time. Yeah. I think if we reserve the time and notice it, it gives the public more opportunity at least to be aware, and to Mr. Chairman's point, if we need to, or to your point, both of your points, if we need to cancel it because it's not needed, that's better than not having at least it on the books. So I think we should set those times, Mr. Chairman, but we'll probably have to do that offline, and then they can be noticed.
Yeah, we can do that. So what we're talking about in 2 weeks, and then, we'll have the certification meeting, which I think the statute sets it at 21 days or something after the election, and probably some interim thing, maybe the week before that, in case we need to address anything to reserve. So that seems fine to me. Are you okay with that schedule, Mr. Bone?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. All right, good. Unless anybody has anything else, I think we're ready to adjourn. Anything?
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you. Take care.
Have a good
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.